Welcome to Conversate, our podcast where we engage in conversation. On this week's episode, Aaron Gerke, and Kevin Bender are having a conversation about Ruth, which leads us into a further conversation about following and also about leading. Who is it that you follow? Who is it that you lead? Because whether you believe it or acknowledge it, you are. You are following people and you are leading others. So are you doing it intentionally? Well, pay attention to this conversation, and we hope you enjoy it. Hey, morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Aaron.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise, man. I missed you yesterday.
You missed me? Where was it?
I noticed your presence was gone because it was a big day yesterday.
Yeah, it was.
Marcus and I talked about going to. I don't know if they have any of these around here, but like there's a big arcade game. It's called like Big Buck Hunt or something like that.
Oh, you're talking about deer hunting.
Yeah, opening day, man. Opening day.
It's like a national holiday.
Up here.
Yeah, a national holiday. Maybe a regional holiday.
Yeah.
No, it's fun. Yeah, I'm not a very good hunter, but I enjoy being in the woods.
Think any of our audience are active hunters?
I would imagine so, or have been, or know people who are. So, yeah. Why?
Just curious how they did.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I didn't even say it. So I did not shoot anything because there was nothing to shoot.
Okay.
I saw lots and lots of deer though.
Yeah.
Lots of does, lots of fawns. It was pretty cool. I mean, I saw a coyote actually.
Really?
Yeah. There was one point where there was a deer that came. I was like on the edge of this field, and this one deer came out of the woods, and it just stood, and it just stared at where it came out from the woods. I was like, what is it doing? Like it just stared where it came from for like 10, 15 minutes, and then it did a couple of circles, and then it just laid down in this field. I'm like, it's gonna take a nap, But then maybe 10 minutes later, a big doe came out of the woods from the other side, and then it was a fawn. It must have been like, I don't know, it was older, it didn't have spots or anything, but then it hopped up and like ran right over, must have been its mom, so I don't know, they were coming out like of separate sides of the field and stuff, so I don't know if they got separated at some point, or I don't know, but there's just cool things to watch when you're out in the woods.
That's like what I hope my child does if it ever gets lost, like
just lay down. Yeah.
Comes to like a clear open space, easily viewable, doesn't keep running around in different directions.
Well, it was funny because the mom walked out, and then the fawn just like ran, like just jumping and like nosing its mom, and mom just kept walking. It was like in my mind, it's like the mom was like, you kid, like
typical.
Yeah. And it was even like nosing at her and stuff, and she like picked up one of her hooves, I guess, and like batted it away. It's pretty funny.
Not right now, Billy.
Yeah. But so I was walking around at one point. There's where I hunt. There's lots of different kinds of terrain. So I'd been up in this field, and then there's a swamp and a river down below, and I was gonna do this circle, and I in general knew where I was, and I was walking along a river, so I basically knew I don't cross the river, but as long as I stay close to the river, I'll end up where I need to get going and stuff. But there was so much. Because I think the river had flooded, and so there were lots of downed trees, and it was swampy, and so there's other wet spots that I can't go around. So I can't just walk in a straight line or hug the bank of the river. So I'm in and out and stuff. And I thought I was walking in a straight line, but all of a sudden and there was just a little bit of snow on the ground. All of a sudden I was back on my own footprints.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, what? And then I remembered I had just heard it. I don't even remember where I heard it, podcast or something. Just like last week, I heard this. I don't know if you know this, but humans, if they're lost, like if you're lost in the woods, or even I think even like in the desert or whatever, if you don't know which way to go, humans naturally will end up walking in a circle.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That explains why in like every movie they're like, "Oh, we've been going in circles."
Yeah. So I had this experience, where I thought I was going straight. I knew I was like skirting around stuff, but I thought I was like going around it and then like getting back straight.
Yeah.
But I was just like going to the right of an obstacle, walking straight, going to the right of an obstacle, walking straight, going to the right of an obstacle, and then I was back where I was.
That's crazy.
And I was like, huh. So I had just heard this, and then I don't know. I was thinking about this though too, like in connection with what I was preaching on Sunday. This whole idea of like a following and having somebody to follow, and this whole idea of like, wow, if I'm on my own, like I just walk in circles. Like I don't get anywhere. Like if I'm just doing, oh man, you could even go back to like what we talked about with Judges. If I'm just doing what's right in my own eyes, like I'm just never gonna grow, never gonna mature. I'm just gonna keep coming back on my own footprints and be like, well, I don't know. I guess I'll just
Another lap.
try again, So
Yeah.
there is something about like having somebody to follow, or having a path to follow. Like I mean, I was trying to, blaze my own trail. Like there were no, there were deer tracks going in every direction, but I was like, well, I can't just follow these things aimlessly. Like I knew I was trying to get back to a blind that I was at, and I knew I just needed to go straight, but I couldn't. It was just harder to get there than I thought it would be. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, the more I think about it. So that was my revelation in the woods yesterday.
And there you go. Dude, the woods are great for that.
I know.
All day silence in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because you could even make the application with the little fawn that I saw.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
like its mom comes out, like you probably should have just stayed with your mom. Like just follow your mom.
Mm-hmm. And kind of the joy, I think, too, in walking. I mean, you see it in the fawn, right?
Yeah.
Like having that person who leads you, and there's kind of protection and guidance and wisdom, right?
And without it, it just laid down. Like I don't know.
Like I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Just end up going in circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe tell us a little bit more about Ruth, right? Or we can kind of just point blank make that connection. This last Sunday, we were in that section of the story, a short chapter in a short book.
Short book, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. There's a lot of components to the Book of Ruth that we can look at, and some that I didn't even touch. Where I settled in was at basically in Ruth's statement to her mother-in-law Naomi, because I'm not going to do all the context here. Naomi, her mother-in-law, had said, Ruth, you can go back home, and Ruth says, no, where you go, I will go. Whom you serve, I will serve. Where you die, I will die. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. She's basically just saying, I want to align my life and my purpose with yours, right? I mean, it's just like all in. So she does, and so that's where I ended up talking about like the whole idea of following, like who do you follow, whose voice has an impact on the way that you think about the world, whose actions are you modeling your actions after, and also who do we have the opportunity to influence and lead, and ultimately to Jesus. So, but yeah, I don't know if you want. What do you want to do? You want to talk about the Bible, the Ruth story? Do you want to talk about the application, about following and leading?
Well, I think it's always good to like pause there. I mean, that's where I don't know, my heart's at least this morning and yesterday too. Really, is that because I lose sight of that notion of there are people who are leading me, and I am also leading others.
Yeah.
I don't actively think about that.
Okay.
Like there's certain relationships where it's like, okay, yeah, with my daughter Lily, like clearly I'm influencing her,
Yeah.
and and I got to be, smart about how I act, or
Yeah.
I try to be, attentive to even, so like last night, we were having some issues in the night, and so middle of the night, Lily's struggling to stay asleep, and she's cranky, and I'm cranky, and, I realize, oh man, like, I if I respond to her, you want to teach your kids things, but if like kind of emotionally where I'm at while I'm teaching them is not a good place, then what am I teaching them, right? That it's okay to, maybe speak in their anger, right? Like that's kind of where I was at last night because I was frustrated. I was like, dude, just go to sleep. Like I don't want to have to get you a bologna sandwich at 2 a.m. This is ridiculous.
While we're here, I'll have a bologna sandwich with you, right?
So, but yeah, because Lily's gonna pick up on my behaviors, kind of my leading in her life, and and that's a pretty like easy relationship to target. But even wider than that, I think we would say like there are other people in our life who we might not realize are watching us.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, just think about how many when you're just having conversations with people, and we're probably already doing it in this one, how attentive we are to other people's stories, other people's examples, things that other people say that enter our minds, and then we end up speaking those things again to somebody else.
Yeah.
And it might just be little things like, oh man, I don't even know. Like, I mean, I was watching the news this morning, for better or for worse, and the things that I heard them speak and the way that they were speaking, the angle that they were taking as they were telling stories, that is in my mind now.
Yeah.
So now when I look at these certain stories or these things that have happened, I'm coming to those now through the lens of what I heard through that news reporter's representation of it.
Yeah, right. These things kind of live with you, stay with you, and then even go out of you into other,
And I
situations.
so don't want to believe that that's true. I really want to believe like I'm my own person. I'm making my own decisions, my own like validation of whatever. But that's not possible to do. Like we are like biased, I guess, or by people that have influence on us. We just are. And I don't really like to admit that, And I actually remember being when I was a kid, and I think I've told you this story. I don't think I've told it on the podcast before, but I have an older brother, and I still remember this experience where we were buying CDs, back in the day, different albums, going to the store or whatever, and my older brother, he always got to lead the way in trying new things. So I just kind of got to sit back and watch. But he brought home a CD, and you had CDs, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
love CDs.
And so they always came with the little a little booklet in the front with the lyrics for the songs, which we just don't get that anymore now when we're listening to YouTube Radio or Spotify or Apple, whatever.
Yeah, Google them.
Yeah, you have to go look it up.
Yeah.
So when my brother brought this one CD home, my dad said to my brother, "All right, let's sit down and read through these lyrics together." And my brother's like, "Why? Why?" And so my dad made him do it, and they read through it. And I just remember my dad saying to my brother, because it wasn't all that bad,
Sure.
But I just remember my dad saying to my brother, like, "Do you think that these are good, kind, like Christian words, and that we would want to be thinking about?" And I just remember like my brother like being distraught about this, because it was like fun music that you're hearing on the radio, and I remember him saying like, "Dad, I don't even listen to the words really," And my dad was like, "Well, what is that? What is that saying if you're not being attentive to even what's going on?" So I don't even remember how old I was, but all of those things. I mean, long story short, he had to bring the CD back.
Sure.
And it was like, ooh boy,
Yeah.
So that didn't always remain true. That was like a one-time thing, and eventually we were able buy what we wanted to buy. But I still remember being like, oh man, yeah, I probably should pay attention to the words.
Right.
But yeah, I don't. Anyways,
I was gonna say that's a great father move by Bob Gierke. I mean, just thoughtful, really, because it is a reality, that like these things do affect you, but how often are we just completely non-attentive to them, but or don't ask those questions like, why am I surrounding myself with this,
right?
Right,
and that's on the following piece. So that's like as we're following other people, but then in the who's following you piece too. I mean, you already talked about your daughter, but I think it's the same thing. Like, oh man, in your workplace, do you know that people are listening to you? Even if you like, even if you're the person that it seems like nobody will listen to, even if your ideas are always shot down or it feels like nobody's noticing you, people still notice you. They still notice the way that you are. They still hear you. I believe that. Even if they shut you down, then it seems like the world's pushing you aside. You're still having an influence over people. And ultimately, like the point I made in my sermon too is like in those moments when you feel like nobody notices you, nobody hears you, like Jesus does. And that was Ruth in Boaz's field. She's just she's a nobody. She's a nobody. She's just picking up scraps, but Boaz noticed her. If he hadn't noticed her, nothing would have happened.
Yeah, for her or Naomi, right? Like they both would have still been in this kind of vulnerable, difficult position. Yeah, not taken care of.
Right.
Yeah.
So I always think about that too. Like, do we notice? Like, I think that's huge on both sides, on the following side and on the leading side. Like, just pay attention.
Yeah, which is hard to do. You'd think it'd be easy to do,
oh my goodness.
But it is hard. It's hard to have the. I mean, I guess it's a deliberate thing, Like you have to be kind of deliberate about paying attention.
Yeah.
It's not something that just like naturally happens. It's kind of like driving, right? Especially if you've driven the same way a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Like I've had times where it's like I don't even remember how I got to work, right?
Yeah.
Because I've driven the path so many times. It's like, well, that seems like a little scary. That
Yeah.
like zoned out for back in St. Louis for 30 minutes, on highways at highway speeds. But I think the same thing can happen for us, in this kind of vein that we're talking about, where sometimes we can get so desensitized maybe by the things that we expose ourselves to, we're not even paying attention anymore. Right. Things can kind of get further and further on a track that's like, well, man, maybe this isn't good for me to be like listening to or taking in or surrounding myself with. Whether it's TV, movies, music, but even people, right? Because I think they say that you kind of become the sum of your 5 closest mates, 5 closest peers.
Okay, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, this is like we see these phenomenons in other ways that are like relatable. So like yawning, right? Like when someone yawns, oftentimes another person will yawn.
Now I want to yawn, but I'm not going to.
I know, I don't feel like yawning either. So, but you'll notice it like in a room. Pay attention next time someone yawns, and then just look to see if someone else does, because usually it will happen.
Right.
Same with, I guess, shivers, and there's like a couple of these other ones that are like common. But sociologists will say that it's also true of cultural practices. It's kind of like mob mentality in a way. Like we lose. I don't know. We're just like you say. We're easily influenced people.
But I think that also means that we're designed for relationship.
Yeah. And have the capacity to influence other people as well.
We're designed for relationship and community, ultimately, so that we reflect God's image to one another and to the world. That would be the ideal goal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's kind of a 2-track system. I mean, it's a 2-way street. And if you think about, that's culture in like a wide sense, but even think about where you work, right? We call that usually like work culture. What's the culture of your workplace? And some places have like it's kind of like not a great work culture. If it's people always cutting each other down, or like there's not a lot of trust between employees or between management or, things like that. Well, that can be a reality, but you can start sowing seeds of trust or of honor, or of teamwork. And maybe at first it's really, really hard because it's not the culture, but you can change. Things don't have to be the way they are, right? Forever. You can actually change and influence others. And a lot of times, you talk about being in a setting where you kind of want to say something, but you're like, I don't know if anyone's even going to hear this. A lot of times, a lot of people are thinking the same thing when they're in those situations, but it's hard to be that one person to say something. But when you do, now you got a whole group of people who rally behind you because they're like, yeah, we felt this way too. You have put words to what we have felt, right? So there's definitely something to this whole influential piece that we want to be mindful of.
Right, right. So I use that phrase that we use in our discipleship language, or that concept of be one and make one. So be a disciple, be somebody who intentionally follows after a person who's mature in the faith, so you can have somebody who's helping to lead you to Jesus, but then intentionally lead somebody else. Like discipleship really ought to be like this worldwide long line of follow the leader. And Jesus is the leader. So it's not follow me. It's follow me as I'm following Jesus, or as I'm following somebody who's following Jesus, and we just got this long train going to eternity.
Right? Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Well, that's really what the church is. As I think about, even the church, as we so not Saints Peter and Paul Lutheran Church, that's part of the church, but all of the followers of Jesus, right, present day, we do have a history that has led us here. It's not like, yes, Jesus is alive, Jesus is present, but it's not just me and Jesus. There's a whole history of people who have been guiding the church and leading the church.
Just like last week when we talked about the whole cloud of witnesses. Right? I mean, that's who they are.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes people will use like language of the fathers. They'll talk about the fathers, and you can say mothers too. Fathers and mothers in the faith. And that language also kind of denotes a whole following aspect, or, child, parent, like the fawn and the doe, and so you have fathers in the faith who'd be people like, in the early days, like Origen is a church father. He's a guy who, well, he had a lot of wisdom from God, and he passed it on, and people sat at his feet. In Origen, actually, at his time, there's people spreading false ideas about who God is and who Jesus is. And you know what Origen does to say, no, you trust me? He says, look, I studied under the feet of, I always forget the guy's name, it's a P word. And it's not Patmos, because that's an island. But basically, John, the disciple of Jesus, there was a person who studied under John, the disciple of Jesus, in Origen.
Philo? Is it Philo? Is that the one?
No, he's a historian. I think Philo's a historian, like a Jewish historian.
Okay.
But anyways, Origen, basically what he says is, look, I studied under this guy, who studied under John, who studied under Jesus. So he claims this discipleship basically as to give him authority in the church. Like, you should listen to me because I'm not just making up stuff on the fly. I'm actually following in the same kind of lineage of Jesus. And I mean, that's, for the church at large, they kind of follow that in the whole, I guess, apostolic descendancy. It's not something like we really talk much about, or, with apostolic succession. Is that the phrase?
Yeah, in the Catholic Church, especially.
Right. Which, like, it's helpful to remember the Catholic Church was the only church for, 1,600 years or whatever? 1,500 years. Yeah. Not to get too confusing to listeners, but basically it's that idea was built into the church. It's that we don't exist in just a moment here today.
Right.
There's a history. This is why we have creeds.
Right.
So that there is this train, this kind of holding on to a rope, this guiding chain throughout history. But yeah, we can continue to provide that today, even in our own relationships.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And the Great Commission is go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them everything that I have commanded you, right? So as we go and as we've gotten here, it's Jesus teaching. That is the commonality. So the apostles taught what Jesus taught them. The people who were taught by the apostles, were taught what Jesus taught them, and we continue to teach that. And and it's not a giant game of telephone. We have the words of the scriptures, for us. So we're actually that are living and breathing and active, and so we are able to continue to go back to the source,
right,
and hear and study and all that kind of stuff too. So yeah, but just back to the point. It's I think that the whole concept of be one, make one is very simple. It's a simple concept, a simple idea. That I think if we let that rest in our hearts and our minds, and as we bring into consideration everything that we've talked about with following and leading, then that starts to make sense a little bit more of who are we following and who are we leading. Yeah. Do I have someone intentionally in my life that I intentionally follow, that they intentionally actually lead me,
right?
And that I think it's a little bit more than just saying, unfortunately, I follow you, Pastor Kevin, or Pastor Aaron, or some Christian teacher, or a book that I've read, or whatever. I think it's got to be a little bit more tightly woven to your daily living and into who you are relationally. So if you don't have someone very closely related to you, I don't just mean by blood, but in relationship, leading you and checking in with you and seeing how you're doing and helping you to learn and grow, that'd be something to shoot for, to ask for. And if you don't know who to ask us. Pastor Kevin and I know some people who would be willing to do that for you. But then on the other side, who are you raising up? Are you intentionally invested in the life of someone for the purpose of leading them to Jesus?
Yeah.
And teaching them what Jesus has taught, teaching them how to do the kind of Great Commission work, not just head knowledge about the Bible, but actually how to live this out, and then how to do it for somebody else.
Right.
So I think I love that concept, and I think it's very simple to come back as a point to check in on, am I making, intentionally.
Yeah,
intentionally.
Right. Because I'm following people anyway, and I'm leading people anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But am I being intentional about it? Basically, am I? Do I have that deliberate thought towards this, and not just kind of going through life unthinkingly? Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you threw that in there. Just the open invite to anyone listening. Because I think that is kind of the next hard step. Is who is that for me exactly? And maybe there is someone, and it's wow, someone comes to mind easily. This person is already someone who I look up to, and I feel like they're kind of guiding me in my faith, but I've never really asked them to do it.
Yeah.
Go to that person. That's a great person for you, clearly.
Right.
But if you don't have that, talk to Pastor Aaron, talk to myself, because there are a whole number of people who are ready to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. Well, let's leave it right there. I think that's plenty to digest and think about. So, again, those of you who are listening, we thank you for tuning in once again, and we pray that this conversation was a blessing to you. Our goal is that you don't just hear our conversation, but that you take what we talked about and put it into practice, start another conversation with somebody else, and take it from there. All right, well, have a blessed rest of your day, Kevin, and you all as well.
Happy hunting.